Okay, well, welcome everyone to the FBA Inbound Readiness Zoom that ScanPower and Marketplace Prep are hosting. Um, I'm actually really excited for this because up until this point, I've spent a lot of time talking to our customers and prep centers and 3PLs and being really focused on kind of that particular niche. Um, we have kind of an interesting mix of customers ranging from, brands, agencies, 3PLs, resellers, wholesalers, lots of different use cases. And so traditionally, ScanPower has spent a lot of time trying to accommodate a lot of different workflows. And so as we transition to the new API, we're bringing along everything that we had before that works with the new API, but also letting go of some things that either don't work with the new API or are, um, just hard to implement in kind of the stepwise workflow that exists. So I'm excited to hear other people's take on what this means and what its impact is going to be, and for us to have a discussion about how we can make this work best for 3PLs and sellers alike. So, James, welcome. Um, you've had a little bit of time to play around with it. What are your thoughts so far?
Um, for anyone that is on the warehousing side of their business or is involved with communicating to their warehouse, um, that used software before, this will be a significant adjustment. For those who primarily use Seller Central, I think this will be very similar with actually some advantages or some benefits, but it's going to be like the two different sides are like you're either going to have to change a lot or you're going to discover a lot depending on your previous experience.
Yeah, I mean, immediately we've run into issues with pack, like the current workflow where you get your shipment splits and then you pack after that. We can replicate that and it works okay, but there's no notion of a case pack or a pack template now. So if you're using the pack after workflow, Amazon can deal you some crazy splits, particularly if you're choosing Amazon optimized or, three or more splits. So you
And
can't say I've got a carton, I've got a three packs of five, don't divide those up. We're working with the FBA API team, and hopefully soon they're going to support these pack templates that we can hopefully even import from sent to Amazon and make use of. But right now, you can only specify kind of a pack template in the pack first workflow.
and that pack first workflow is okay in scenarios where you have a massive shipment with two SKUs. But once you start getting to 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 SKUs, keeping track of boxes at that level can get very, very messy.
And that's for a couple of different reasons. One, Amazon's dividing the SKUs into pack groups. So you could have one, two, three, four pack groups. And Amazon has a notion of a box that's attached to a pack group. So you may have pack group one, box one, but that may go in shipment four as box one. So then, you have to have some method for tracking which pack group boxes go with which actual shipments. And then James has pointed this out and made the great suggestion that if you're going to wait to print your box labels until they're available, the shipping labels, like say you're doing a small parcel shipment, and at the end you want to print your box labels, they're going to come out in shipment order, but they're not going to, you're going to have the mismatch between the pack groups and the shipments. So the pack first flow has its issues as well.
And I'll be working with Paul as well on both flows because both flows have pros and cons on ways to navigate this. What I like to call is I like to blend the physical with the digital. Paul has ScanPower, it's the digital side. I have a warehouse that has kind of boots on the ground, and I want to blend the two. Where can we make tweaks with the software within Amazon's limitations that say, hey, what if we made a button that does this that doesn't impact Amazon, but it just makes our job easier? I try to find those blending, and I think that's going to be the next, probably like a Q1 project for me and Paul, realistically.
Right. Ryan, others, let's hear your thoughts on the new API as you understand it, or just concerns, questions that you've thought about.
Or do you want to run through kind of a brief run through of what pack first and pack after or post pack means and
Yeah,
what that looks like?
I do have a question, and it's kind of like a very generalized question, which kind of goes into what you're talking about right now, James. We've always done a pack after workflow. So we've always split the shipments into 5 locations, and then we prep everything, pack it according to those 5 shipments. With the new API that's coming out, I haven't looked at it too closely. I know there's the 5 carton rule that Amazon has implemented. Um, but it sounds like we'll still have the option to split the shipments first and then pack
Yes,
or prep and pack, or we have the option to do everything in case packs and prep it all and then choose the shipping destinations.
that's correct.
So the key thing here is LTL or SPD. So how you've done it in the past is what we call post pack, post shipment creation packing.
Yep.
The that method right now is only available for LTL. Where it gets really dicey though is those that are doing SPD shipments or have a small amount of products they just want to get out quick. You have to do pre-pack, which means you're packing the boxes, you're sending Amazon, this is the box contents of what I have. Tell me how to split up these boxes. And the problem is it's very complicated to engineer 5 alike or more cases when you have mixed SKUs. Now, you have 100 case packs of the same thing, it's easy. But what if you have 100 SKUs, a dozen each? You're going to have a very hard time making boxes that are 5 alike.
Gotcha. So that mirrors the ship to Amazon workflow.
Yep.
Okay.
The nice thing is in the pack after workflow, you get to see all the placement options and inbound placement fees before you choose, which, and you get to see where the splits are going. So, and I'll demo this so that everyone can have a visual, but um, you do have a little more information to work with in the pack after flow, and you can compare, the combination of placement fees and transportation options, like the total cost for inbounding those items, partnered primarily. We don't have integration with any non-partnered carriers, but you can at least get the Amazon estimates all in one place. You can also print your box labels as you pack in the pack after flow. So in that respect, that there are the least changes if you're going to do LTL only. It's just like James said, when you need to, do a mixture of 200 SKUs and a few of those could go SPD, that's when you get into well, how do I handle this with the pack first flow?
Now, the joy of ScanPower, though, is as you tinker with the shipments, you will discover patterns. And some of those patterns are pretty obvious, like oversized doesn't go with standard or hazmat doesn't go with standard. And let's say you have hazmat products mixed with a big LTL shipment. Well, instead of trying to finagle and like, oh, how do I handle the LTL or whatever, move those hazmat products to a different batch instead of trying to manipulate the batches so they're all LTL or whatever. Sometimes it just makes sense to move those products to a different batch.
So I'm sharing my screen now, and I want anyone who has a question to just pipe in and interrupt me, because you know, a few of you have seen this or are somewhat familiar with it, but it's better for me to hear from you than likewise. So what James was talking about is, you know, what we call a batch is, things that are going to end up in shipments, and how you get the items into the batch is completely up to you. You can import from, a PO, which is basically unshipped inventory in a location. You can import from a spreadsheet. You can scan a SKU in ASIN, UPC, whatever. But once the items are in the batch, you have some options to actually filter by the what we call split types. So if you have things that are oversized, or maybe it's, flammable or whatever, you can filter the batch by those items, and then you can click this select and move and just say, okay, well, let's copy these to another batch, and I'll deal with that in its own SPD shipment because I want these items to go all LTL. So that's something that just works in ScanPower. Another thing is, if you haven't sent the items through send to Amazon, like you've only sent shipments in the API, you're going to get this missing prep category warning. And you just need to do this once for each SKU, but set the prep category. It can, most of the time it's none, but in the case that it is like fragile or on a hanger, sharp, small, whatnot, you can set to something else. And then if you have multiple items in the batch that need the prep category set and you want it to be the same, you can just click this checkbox here. So batches feed into shipments. Batches are listed on the left, and then the step that you're on is going to be in the content area. So in the pack first flow, like James said, you can do SPD or LTL. If something has an expiration date, even if you don't know the actual expiration date, you got to give it an expiration date in this shipping plan step. So we have a setting that will allow you to say just default the expiration dates to, now plus 2 years or something. If you're going to add expiration dates when you pack, that's, just a requirement of the new API. So I've already gotten a shipping plan for this. A shipping plan in the pack first workflow is really just an identifier. It's not any kind of shipment split or even a shipment preview. It's a shipping plan that just becomes a shipment and is attached to these pack groups. So what we're looking at now is, because this was a fairly simple batch with two standard size products or SKUs, they're all in a single pack group. If Amazon had divided them into multiple pack groups, you would see those just like sent to Amazon. We've tried to emulate sent to Amazon where it made sense. So if you want to pack things using a form, you can do that. If you want to, let's just say we unpack these, and say you're in a workflow where you have unsorted mixed SKUs and you want to scan to pack, you can just select the box and just scan the items in individually. And then we're adding a filter so that you can say, just show me all the unpacked items or show me all the packed items. We have currently a box template system, but if you need to, if you do custom size boxes, you can also just enter those custom like that. So in this pack step, you can still print F and SKU labels. Some people do that. We have a setting that allows you to print the F and SKU label as you pack. There will also be an option to update the expiration date as you're packing. We haven't added that yet, but it's going to roll out in the next week or so. And
I'd
then,
like to highlight though, these boxes here at the top, these are going to be boxes that you need to manually like mark on the box, put a
right.
Sharpie or whatever. Eventually, ScanPower may come out with license plate numbers, whatever, but these are not the same as box one of an FBA shipment. These are a pack group one, box one, and that gets assigned to a particular shipment. That may not be the same box one or box two or whatever of that shipment.
And here's a great
Yeah.
example of that. This shipment has, as box two, it's actually pack group one, box three, meaning that when this shipment was, when we accepted the placement option and the shipment, what Amazon calls the confirmed shipment ID now, when that was confirmed and it generated the box labels, pack group one, box three becomes box two of this shipment. So that's why James says there's got to be something that connects the pack group box to the shipment box. So that this label, and initially that's a marker that says P1B3, but at some point it'll probably make sense for us to add a license plate number that you can scan to print the actual box label. So that's another thing that we're just kind of figuring out what the physical representation is going to be. So after these are packed, we'll show you an indicator and then you can confirm. And again, this is most like sent to Amazon. We will allow you to print all the box labels at once. Right now, this prints in the pack group order. So, you're still going to have to get through to the step 4 to get your shipping labels. But in step 4, you can print, by shipment if that's how you're packing things. One nice thing is in the API, this is just now available. It wasn't available in the last version. You can actually run through your placement options and look at the destinations. So you can based on your experience of where you like to ship and knowing which places are currently receiving. This we ask you to like manually generate the transportation options for each placement option if you want to compare apples to apples. So as you can see, you don't have to accept SPD. You can do a mixture of SPD and LTL. If, for example, here you could say this second shipment, which has these boxes, is going to be LTL. The first shipment, which has these boxes, is going to be SPD. So in the case of LTL, we'll pull in the contact information, but you still have to, enter ship ready date and your total value, and then add a pallet height and weight. So yeah, you can generate transportation options along with the placement option, and we'll calculate the fee for you. We'll probably do this behind the scenes soon and put the total up with the placement option. And this would apply to both. Well, it only applies to this workflow because you can't get transportation options until you pack. So in the pack after workflow, you get the placement option, then you pack, then you get the transportation option. Any questions about like how this pack first flow continues or progresses to the end? Very similar to sent to Amazon.
Will there be a similar option when you're doing the post pack with the LTL as far as you can see like placement options or prices?
There are, and the only difference is you don't get to see them until step 4. You don't get to see you get to see the inbound placement options in step 3. You just don't, or in step 2, you just don't get to see the estimated freight until you've already provided the packing information.
And this is the only workflow that works for SPD.
Gotcha.
One more question, please. So only on step 4 we can print FBA labels.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Now, technically, when you confirm the placement option, so ScanPower allows you to print a custom box label, which mimics the generated FBA box label by Amazon. Once you confirm a placement option, we know the shipment IDs, but by that time, you know, you're kind of to the box label step. So I'll go ahead and just confirm this simple example where, you know, it's a single shipment and it's SPD, so you can see the box label step. We have noticed that the new API is quite a bit slower than the old API. I assume that will improve. So yeah, once we default to 4x6, but you can print either US letter, 4x6, and again, these are generated in shipment order. So because there was only a single shipment, the pack group and box numbers line up pretty cleanly. But if this were split into 2 or more shipments, you'd have this situation where you might have what you labeled as box 3, maybe box 2 or box 1 in the shipment. So that's the pack first flow. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel that. We have really had some issues with Amazon charging us freight fees. We haven't really seen the placement fees because I think those are delayed, but you know, here we are a developer. They know we're a developer. We're running through lots of test shipments, and even though we're canceling the shipments within 24 hours of an SPD or 1 hour of an LTL shipment, we're still getting, you know, tons of freight charges on our test seller account. So I would make sure you have your teams keep a close eye on that, because we've had to fight Amazon to get reimbursed for a lot of these that you know, we can prove that we canceled the shipment, and canceling the shipment, there's no longer kind of a separation between deleting a shipment or canceling it and the plan. Everything flows from the shipping plan. So in ScanPower, what you'll see is just a big red button that says cancel shipment plan, and that cancels the shipments, it cancels the estimated freight or the transportation, the placement, it cancels everything. But just make sure that you keep an eye on your settlement reports, because as with other things, Amazon isn't always good about giving you your money back or charging you when they shouldn't. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this one so that we can see all the placement options on the pack after flow. So I have you know, this is a real simple example. It's just got 15 and 25 quantity of 2 SKUs. So in the bottom here, I'm going to choose LTL only. Again, if you want to print labels, you can do those all at once. You can do those as they're added to the batch. You can do it at any time. But the first step is to create a shipping plan. And then as soon as we get the shipping plan, then we show the placement options, which is similar to what you're used to, except you get to see all the placement options. And if Amazon, it seems like they're pretty smart about figuring out if you can get at least 5 equal SKU counts.
So what we have found in my testing is that if you have a minimum of 5 units, you are likely guaranteed to have the option to do optimized splits. However, we have seen exception cases where you have a whole bunch of ones and twos, and you have one item that you have 5 or more of. What it will do is it'll split those five units or more into the 5 destinations, and you'll have a 6th destination that will still incur the placement fee of 0, but it'll be all your ones and twos.
Nice.
It's handy because it will allow you to still ship those smaller quantities. But the problem comes in is if you're doing this method, every single shipment has to go LTL. So if all of your small quantities are only 3 boxes, well, you're better off moving those to their own batch, a different batch from this existing split, and shipping those UPS with some placement fees because the shipping costs for a pallet may not be worth it.
So here, again, it's a simple example, not a lot of SKUs, but we've got 3 one-shipment options, and I've got my warehouse location set to Greenfield, so it's outside of Indianapolis. It's the Midwest. So we're getting Michigan, North Carolina, one to California, which shockingly has a pretty low placement fee, and then two shipment options, again, Southeast or more Midwest, and then one 5-way split, which includes Arizona, Pennsylvania, Virginia, actually 2 Arizona, interestingly. But the way that these are split is not, consistent. So we got 2 and 5, 3 and 5, 3 and 3, 4 and 7. But yeah, so step 1, get a shipping plan. Step 2, choose your placement option. Let's just go ahead and confirm this one. And then in the pack later flow, the packing step looks very similar. One of the things that we're going to be adding even before it's available in the API is the notion of a pack template. So in the case where, you've got inventory that always ships together, you're going to be able to associate, both the ASINs and the box template together. And we'll just default, whenever we see a SKU that's part of a pack template, we'll give you the option to use that. So here, the packing step is divided up by shipments, whereas before it was divided up by pack groups. So it's a little harder to run experiments, although in the pack later flow, you can certainly get a shipping plan, review your placement options, go back, cancel that plan, adjust your inventory quantities, get another shipping plan. So there's some ways that you can run experiments, especially if you're unsure how it's going to handle the, large number of SKUs and smaller quantities. And you can also, you can go through for this group of items, pack them, and then download the pack lists and be able to, upload a pack list or a spreadsheet essentially with the boxes, the dimensions, and the SKUs in various quantities. So you can use that to be a little more efficient, especially if you're just running experiments and you need to kind of quickly or reasonably quickly get to the transportation options.
Are
I'd
we
like to
still
ask a
able-
question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Kate.
So when these boxes are generated and there's a dimensions for the box, does it consider the size of the items that they'll actually fit in that box?
We're not seeing that. Are you referring to how Send to Amazon does
Well,
sometimes?
I've never used Send to Amazon, but it's asking you to pack 4 mugs and 7 caps, but are you assured that whatever it tells you to put in the box will actually fit?
No, what's happening here is this is an option to put a box. So Paul, could you create a box real quick? So that created a box 1
Okay,
using the template that he has selected, which you can change. And now it gives you the choice to pack as many units as you want of each SKU into that box. So if Paul can only fit 3 hats and 3 mugs, he can put 3 and 3 and then create another box again. And that one will have the remaining 2 hats.
and at this level, those boxes do not have to be identical.
No.
Okay.
Are we able to adjust quantities going to each of the 5 locations? Like we can currently adjust a quantity up or down 6, or I think 5% of the total amount.
Yeah. You can still do that. The limitation with the API is you can only do it after you've confirmed the transportation. So I want partnered shipping. This is my pallet, size. This is the value of the shipment. Confirm the transportation, and then you can go back to this pack step, and there's a little selection here that will allow you to make quantity adjustments.
And
So you can
Paul,
move an item from one box to another. You can add 6 units or 5% to the shipment, or you can remove 6 units or 5%. Or if you need to remove an ASIN entirely, it can only be 6 units or less.
and that's something that me and Paul that's like a Q1 type of thing that we could build the interface to build a memory of like, hey, you made an adjustment and save that and push it through after. But that's just going to take some development work too. Sorry to put more on Paul's plate, but I'm just thinking about how you could make those changes artificially and
Right.
then ScanPower remembers them and applies them after transportation, but that'll have to come later in Q1.
So for us to actually call the API and make the adjustment, you have to have what internally it's like a confirmation ship or transportation ID, but basically you have to confirm transportation in step 4 before we can make those adjustments.
So what is the difference between step 2 is confirmed shipping and step 4 is confirmed transportation?
Transportation is choosing, whether it's going to be partnered or non-partnered, your ship date,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
optionally
Okay.
your delivery window,
Number
all
of
that
pallets,
stuff.
yeah.
And then, once you've, like, we don't have to wait to print the box labels, so we can print the box labels right here as we pack. Those are just generated by ScanPower. We also have some box label type selections, so you can print a 2D barcode separately or with the FBA box label unified. You can include the F and SKU, and for single SKU boxes, some other options like that. But in this workflow, the print box label step is really more about printing pallet labels, because most people are going to want to print the box labels as they build the pallet.
Right. So in the confirmed transportation, do we see different price
Yeah.
options for different carriers or?
Exactly. Let me just quickly pack these and
Yeah.
then I'll take you to that step.
Also, I think I can speak on behalf of Paul. Print pallet labels will eventually be available here too, I think.
Right. And we've also talked about, if we're using the pack first flow and we generate our own box labels, let's make that P1, B1
Bigger.
much larger and easier for you to match it up. Okay, so we got, 5 shipments, set the ship from, set the value.
Auto estimate the freight class, or do we put that in ourselves?
You have to put that in yourself right now. We're gonna
Build a calculator into it, right?
build a calculator for that.
I know it's
So
not your
you'll see-
responsibility, but I've seen different like if I have boxed do it previously and then I go through a third party freight broker or something, I give them the same dimensions. Sometimes I end up with different freight classifications and I see that that affects the price. Do you know like what is the most reliable way to calculate that?
So there's two kind of ways a freight class can be determined. One is the commodity of the product, which is kind of like there's certain commodities that they just say, hey, all tires are this density. Because it's freight classes is just a fancy way to say density. Some companies do it by commodity, and it makes things a little bit more confusing. I prefer, it's not perfect, but I prefer a pure density-based calculation. Because let's be honest, most Amazon sellers are not selling one category of product. And these pallets will be mixed with all kinds of stuff. So yeah, if you're selling tires and shampoo, like it gets really complicated. So that's where you just do purely density, and there's a formula out there for it, saying what is the density of my pallet or whole shipment, and what is the freight class that's tied to that? And there's, like I said, there's math behind it. It's not really complicated. It's just kind of nuanced.
Okay, I've seen those calculators out there before. I didn't know how reliable they were.
It depends on if you're just doing if you're doing one pallet, it's really easy, but some of them don't handle multi pallets very well. The goal of I'll work with Paul is building on a calculator that will work across the board. And is it going to be perfect? No, but it'll be better than having to manually calculate it.
Gotcha. And then similarly, the total value um spot, does that
That'll be
calculate
automatic,
automatically based?
essentially.
It will be automatic. Okay.
Yeah, because we'll have the inventory for the sellers, so we'll know what the price of that is in the marketplace, and we can just multiply
Retail
times.
price times
Gotcha.
number of units.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good question. Yeah, just calculating freight class and shipment value. We're also going to work on doing, cubic volume so that we can just know, how much product you're dealing with and help default pallet weight, for example. We do that right now in the current version. It's an estimate, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, and let's be honest, we've all seen products that have wrong dimensions on Amazon, but the percentage of those is fairly small. Like they do pop up and it probably will throw off the numbers a little bit, but on average, it'll be a good enough rough estimate to say, hey, I have 300 cubic feet of product. Well, then that's probably going to be multiple pallets. Oh, I have 5 cubic feet of product. Probably not going to be on a pallet.
So the nice thing about the transportation options is you get, just in the partnered here, we're getting like eight 8 different options. It's a little hard to see the estimate just because of the way the HTML is rendered. But they're sorted least expensive to most expensive, except for JB Hunt here, which seems to, maybe this is alpha order. Sorry. Yeah, this looks like it's alpha order. It should be.
But over time too, all these UI things where how it looks, that will be improved and changed and updated. Right now, the priority is make it work.
So you can see all the partnered options and you actually get to choose a delivery window here. And then,
Are those delivery or
we'll
a
add up
pickup?
all the freight for you.
Oh, that's ship. Oh, that's confusing. Ship date is 12/5, but you can pick delivery windows. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar. I'm familiar with Estes, but I'm not familiar with Central. Yeah, again, this is coming from Amazon's API, so we can kind of trust it, but not totally.
So we use Central all the time. They're pretty reliable. But I'm sorry, the deliver date, if that changes, if you move that up to like next day, is that going
Yeah.
to change the price?
No, no, this is the quote. That quote applies to all these delivery windows.
Wow.
Now, this is again just the estimate. What the final price is, what they charge you may change, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't be more. What's your experience with that?
They will do a correction if, like, for example, I've known people that would say, "Oh, my freight class is 50. It's the lowest freight class, it's the cheapest." Well, yeah, it's the cheapest, but if it's not actually a class of 50, they will reclassify it and charge you more. Now, most people don't talk about that, but it does happen because it kind of gets shoveled into your settlement reports and most people don't see it. Um, what I'm theorizing though is I don't think that date is an appointment date. I think that is an kind of a weird estimated timeline that you think it's going to arrive there. And the
Yes.
reason I say that is because they're not factoring in distance here. A ship by date of 12/5 having a delivery date of 12/6 or whatever. I don't know what the soonest is, but 12/8, 12/5. Look at Central. A ship by date of 12/5.
Yeah, but that's to Pennsylvania. I mean, I don't,
Well,
that's still a
no,
pretty
go
good
to the
haul from
Arizona one. Go to the
Indiana.
Arizona one. Middle top.
Um, it doesn't start until the 8th. Again,
Uh,
it's optimistic, but it won't start, so I think you're right. I think it's an estimate that,
so look at this.
yeah,
That's impossible. You can't have a ship by date and a delivery by date this next day across the country.
right.
So I would not rely on that as a delivery date. Just to be honest, I'm surprised Amazon even puts that in there, but I think that's going to be more applicable for non-partnered LTL, where you're scheduling your own freight, where you're going to give an estimated timeline. I do not think that's anything related to carriers because let's be honest, every FC is delayed right now. Like every
Right.
single one.
Hi. So if we're using our own Amazon Freight account, how do we put our BOL numbers? Where do we go?
So you'll select non-partner.
So if you select non-partner, they give you the list of, you know, non-partnered, or you can choose other, but we're not actually interfacing with these. So you do have to generate a delivery window
Okay.
and then select it. And again, this is
Range.
what the API is returning, but choose a delivery window, and then once you confirm the shipping, we'll will request the Amazon reference ID, and you'll provide that to your, non-partner carrier to get your freight quote.
Yeah.
And then at the end, put your tracking number back in that we push through to Amazon. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. So at what point this period of time starts when we so we can cancel without cancel shipments without any charges from Amazon?
These,
From
you
the
only have 1 hour to cancel them.
yeah, but from what step?
Once
Uh,
you press
From
this button,
uh
From when you confirm the shipping.
okay, step 2, correct?
Yeah.
so you can leave it on this page for a little bit, but once you press confirm shipping, you got an hour.
Got it.
Now I see when you select non-partnered carrier, it gives a bunch of options for a bunch of different carriers. If you then go to a freight broker and they give you a bunch of options and you choose Central or T-Force or whoever, do you have to go back into ScanPower and tell them which carrier will be transporting it?
You have to tell them before you press confirm shipping, you have to indicate if you go through your freight broker, it's going to go through a non-partnered carrier.
Right.
So even if
Well,
even if Central is available as a partnered carrier, but you went through an external broker to go through Central, that's now still considered non-partnered.
I think
Right.
he's asking if you choose other, but your non-partnered is actually on the list, do you have to go back and select it? I don't think so.
So you can just choose other every time and move on. As long as you coordinate with a third party freight broker to carry it, that's Amazon
Yeah. As
Probably.
long as,
accepted carrier.
we think so. As long as they have the reference ID and you've gotten a tracking number from them that you've put back into our system to give to Amazon, it should not matter which of these you select. I mean, it shouldn't matter if you select other, because I don't know, are any of your common non-partnered carriers on here?
I only
Um,
have a few, but most of these look Chinese.
Right. It's quite
I
a
mean,
few.
I saw Central earlier. We use them a lot. I saw Estes. We use them a lot. I guess I don't actually see them on that list.
Those
What
were
I
all
would say is
partnered.
that if you're using a non-partnered, what Amazon's tried to do is just get more visibility. What they do is they try to get some visibility now, and then a year from now, they'll probably have more strict requirements around that field. And then another year from now, it'll be even more strict. That's just kind of how Amazon does things. Even in the past year, they had the API that didn't really mess with in terms of like forcing people to send to Amazon because they needed to get visibility of what was going on. Well, they had a whole year and now they're like, surprise, change over to this new workflow. Now that we can control that visibility better.
Now, you mentioned going back and adding the tracking number. How do you do that?
That's the final step.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Is that a part of your current API? Because that's not a thing that I've been doing.
Yeah.
yeah. If you send contents, we send the feed, you select non-partner, there's a place to enter the
Oh, is
tracking
that
information.
the PRO?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, okay. But you can opt out of that as well.
Well, Amazon requires it now, and this is a way for them
Oh,
like
okay. Gotcha.
better. Remember, Amazon's going to build out something that's rudimentary at first and then enforce against it when it's ready to be enforced. Right now, everything's so broke, they're not going to build like brand new things and then enforce it day one. What they're going to do is build out the foundation so that they can enforce it more later.
Yeah, and they're, we're giving them feedback every week.
Hour, minute.
Um, and they haven't been too receptive yet to adding SPD to this workflow, but we're going to continue to push them on that.
Yeah, if they add SPD to this workflow, it will mirror very similarly to the old ScanPower workflow entirely. Yes, there's a few tweaks here and there, but there will be a lot of similarity. Right now, if you do SPD, it's going to be a large adjustment.
So I am seeing step 5 is print box labels. Does that mean we've had no chance to print your box labels until after you've got your pallets built and
No,
you could do it another
I mean,
place?
it's probably going to be that way in other software, but in ScanPower, you can print the box labels right now in the pack.
Okay, as you pack the boxes, you can label them
Yep.
Only for LTL
for LTL. Okay,
and the post-pack. The pre-pack, you can't. The one that we discussed earlier.
okay.
And this doesn't have to have the 2D label. That's just
Yeah.
the setting that I have selected currently.
And there's still functions like this. We don't have enough products on here to show up, but there's still going to be copy box. And one thing I already talked to Paul about is selecting a bunch of boxes and printing those labels. So that stuff will come, but the ability is there. It will get easier over time. Any other questions besides Amazon is insane?
I guess I don't fully understand when and in what setting the 5 identical box rule applies, if I even have that correct.
That is only for pack first flows.
Only for pack first. So if we're packing afterwards, we don't
It
have to
does not
worry
matter.
about that.
Well,
But
you'll know as soon as you get a shipping plan and we show you the placement options, whether Amazon gave you the Amazon optimized option, the $0 placement
Okay.
option.
So we can basically get our plan right from the software and not have to remember anything ourselves.
Right.
Wherever the
Right.
software tells us to send it is going to be compliant.
Yes.
And I'd also add that once you have selected and confirmed your placement PPs and accepted them with either option, how they get packed is a little less of a big deal because you've already confirmed them. Now, with pack first, you're not gonna be able to change much. With pack later, you've confirmed your placement options, you just start packing.
Okay.
So
If you would like to start experimenting with it, type in int.scampower.com. Same login as your existing login, whether you're a 3PL or a regular just seller account, but int.scampower.com.
yeah, just remember to cancel your shipment plans within an hour if you're doing LTL and you get transportation options, or within 24 hours if you do SPD. Well, cool. Really appreciate everyone joining and taking time out of your busy days. We'll be doing this again. Actually, I'm going to be on a Zoom tomorrow at 1. Probably, a few customers will join and ask questions. Many of them are related to this. And then based on your feedback, James and I might do this again before the 20th. So
Oh, one more question. Right now we're doing our shipments in old workflow, but if we want to experiment and go to the new one, do we need to confirm everything in the old one, somehow close everything, or we can just go and play around?
you can just go and play around. You will want to close out any open or working shipments that are in the old workflow on the 19th or before.
Yeah. I got it.
And I would
Amazon
probably
is
say,
telling us that they're gonna turn off the old API on the 20th, but
if you're gonna
we'll see.
experiment with INT, when you go to create a batch, just add a name to it saying new version or V2 or whatever. And that way you can just, hey, have an indicator. Hey, this is for us to experiment, test, I don't know, experiment, whatever. That way your team doesn't get it confused and say, hey, normal stuff is does normal, but we're going to start experimenting with, I don't know, EXP1, EXP2, or test one, test two. And that way, at least in the transition period, that's what my team is doing. They're gradually moving over to the new workflow and learning it now because we have to be completely done with the old workflow on the 20th, which we are done now, but we're starting to get practice now so that we can learn before it's a requirement.
Right, right.